Okay, this may not be fair, but it falls in the category of old. I, I want to talk about the usefulness of C. Vann Woodward's strange career at Jim Crow, particularly in the times in which we live and the times that we face ahead of us for the next 4 years. Um, it falls in the old category. It's not unknown or underrated. Um, I think it's useful because it's so brave. It began as 3 talks at LSU, the Fleming Lectures. And when you think about the book, it's all about argument. There's scant evidence in the book. Vann's Origins of the New South in 1951 contains very little information about African Americans. His big book on Tom Watson, written earlier, sort of postulates Black populists, but there's not enough information to bring them to life, although he argues that a biracial society was possible. Vann is making an argument in Strange Career that there was a chance of a biracial society, the 1870s until the turn of the century, and that white mastery was not continuous over time to the civil rights movement. In other words, there had been real possibility that was foreclosed. And then he argues that Black people had fought against that every step of the way. And that there had been what he didn't call a long civil rights movement, but what we today call a long civil rights movement. He did that because he wanted to make an intervention in 1955 that would help the burgeoning civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, of course, called it the Bible of the civil rights movement. But when I came into Southern history in the late 1880s and the late 1980s, there were still critics of Strange Career who had been continually arguing for 30 years that white mastery was never undermined to the extent that Black people had agency or there was a possibility of ending segregation. So, in the last 5 years of his life, he died in December 1999. C. Vann Woodward and I became close. We would I would go to his house a couple of times a month. He had a little bar and we would have drinks and then we would go to dinner. He was 91 and he insisted on driving. It was terrifying. It's dark and terrifying. One night we talked about Strange Career and he knew the evidence was scanty. He knew that he had put an idea out there and argued for it. And I could tell that he'd worried about it for 30 years. Then Vann looked into my eyes and gently said, Glenda Gilmore, with gender and Jim Crow, you made an honest man out of me. Never have I been paid a higher compliment. And the moral of this story, why am I telling this story? Historians depend on 3 things. They depend on deep research. They depend on refining their arguments and they depend on writing well. But what I think we all have, and what I urge people to tap into in these really turbulent times, is a 4th thing, and that's historical wisdom. We get a kind of feeling about what fits and what doesn't fit in the periods that we study, about how people had behaved in the past and how they might behave in the future. This historical wisdom, I think, is what prompted Vann and sustained Vann to write those lectures. So he would have loved Heather Cox Richardson, I think, who does a wonderful job of historicizing current events. But what I want to urge everyone is that when your historian's nose starts twitching in the next few years because people are so misrepresenting the past or they're arguing for things that seem so counterintuitive to our historical wisdom, just be like Vann, be brave, stand up and speak out, because I think the world is never needed Southern historians more than it needs us now. And the world needs us on a global scale. What we are seeing unfold, we have all written about, some of us have lived through, and we must meet the challenge of helping people understand it in order to prevent it.